Chapter 1816, Roman Temple of God. After Zhang Yi had solved Demon God Ding, he joined the battlefield without a moment's rest and began to purge the Mechanical Legion. And because of supporting Demon God Ding, these mechanical life forms had already suffered huge losses. So Zhang Yi, like the autumn wind sweeping the leaves, quickly solved them all. However, after the war, after a brief count, the Volt Shadow Troop had actually lost 5 people and seriously injured 7. This kind of battle damage ratio made Zhang Yi silent for a moment, before he said to Bai Li Changqing and the others, "This is war, isn't it?" Bai Li Changqing's upper body combat uniform was damaged, revealing his black iron-like muscular body. He was injured, and even though he was in the middle of the battle, it was not an easy fight. "I'm sorry, Captain, it's just that our strength is not enough," Bai Li Changqing said with some guilt. Zhang Yi shook his head, "Not really." "Well, in any case, we have one, let's go treat the wounded first." It was still because he had too few people under him. If the members of the Volt Shadow Troop could reach 3 digits, or even 4 digits, then the battle losses would definitely be greatly reduced. After all, on such a huge battlefield, it was impossible for the Epsilon-level mutants to be everywhere at once, and in the end, one's own strength was what mattered most. As for those members of the Volt Shadow Troop who were killed in battle, he will continue to select talented mutants for training afterwards. The second phase members of the Volt Shadow Troop have actually been selected and are in the process of training. In the future, Zhang Yi will definitely build a super huge base, and it would be best to have a large group of captain-level combat effectiveness. Then the question arises, where are there so many talented mutants? What is a captain-level mutant now? In the eyes of a mutant of Zhang Yi's caliber, captain-level mutants are no different than ants, and can be killed in a single move. However, for ordinary people and low-level mutants, captains are still absolute powerhouses. Not many people have this kind of talent, and it is even more unimaginable to build an army of thousands of captain-level mutants. I finally understand now why advanced civilizations have developed artificial humans or mechanical life forms, Zhang Yi exclaimed. Whether it was the army of humanoid spiders he saw underground in the Qinling Mountains, or the mechanical legion of the mechanical civilization, they did not need supernatural powers to be able to exert powerful combat effectiveness. "Karen, after we get back, let's modify these mechanical life forms," Zhang Yi said to Lu Karen. Lu Karen was piloting the little snow owl, and the jet thrusters were emitting blue flames as it landed next to Zhang Yi. Upon hearing Zhang Yi's command, she nodded, "Okay, brother. But it might take some time." Even though they have reached level Epsilon, the technology of mechanical civilization is not that easy to master. Of course, it is not difficult to perfectly replicate a mechanical life form. But to create a huge mechanical legion, the cost is too high. In terms of materials, she can't just work on material transformation non-stop, can she? That would really exhaust her. And there's also the functionality aspect. Humans currently don't have the technology to control the functions of mechanical life forms, especially the oversized red energy crystals. It's difficult to create a large army, but it's not difficult to repair these mechanical life forms and then have Shinshin implant brand new programs in them so that they will obey us, Lu Karen said. Zhang Yi rubbed his chin, "That sounds much easier." "It's not a bad idea." After saying that, Zhang Yi raised his hand and opened a series of dimensional gates, which unfolded directly above the battlefield. Soon, all the mechanical life forms on the battlefield soared into the air and entered his alternate dimension. In less than 5 minutes, the entire battlefield was cleaned up, an efficiency that could be called battlefield janitorial. Zhang Yi immediately led all members to leave the area. Deng Shintong was injecting himself with medicine nearby. He had actually sustained some injuries during the battle, caused by the battle-type mecha life forms. He looked at the battlefield, a little reluctant to leave. Just leave like this? According to convention, treasures are buried beneath the land they dig up. Zhang Yi laughed contemptuously, "Treasures? I'm afraid staying any longer would be a death sentence." Demon God Ding was the most important treasure of all, and what could be more important than his body and the spirit of sacrifice? Moreover, he had killed the fourth existence of the upper demon god. Demon gods can call for help from their companions, and perhaps an even more powerful existence will appear next. At this time, Zhang Yi had also expended a lot of energy after the battle, and he must hurry to a safe area to restore his strength. Deng Shintong did not say anything more after hearing this. Meanwhile, in shadow space, the spy Ling, who had been brought here by Zhang Yi, was sitting on a metal box, her two little legs shaking. Upon hearing Zhang Yi's words, she said with a playful expression, "You're really cautious, Mr. Chaos." Zhang Yi glanced at her. When he first chose to come here, he had also considered Ling's suggestion. The more he looked at her now, the more he felt that this woman was extraordinary. There was an impenetrable mist surrounding her. "What's your opinion, Miss Ling?" Zhang Yi asked. Ling slowly raised her head and looked at the empty sky in shadow space. "My advice? Since you were able to solve the demon god Ding, why not try to deal with other demon gods? Those are all good things." "Hey," she suddenly looked at Zhang Yi, her eyes shining with excitement, "why don't you go and fight the most powerful demon god?" Zhang Yi snorted, "Are you kidding?" This time, he was not going to listen to Ling's advice. Demon god Jia, he didn't have any information in his hands, not to mention the fact that he really needed to rest up. As for what to do next, he would have to observe the situation in the other battlefields first. Seeing that Zhang Yi didn't take his advice, Ling just helplessly shrugged her shoulders, but instead of continuing to give advice, she continued to pick up her electronic device listlessly. Many things happened at once. The entire battlefield of Fremons was filled with the fighting between the Mutant Beast Army and the Mechanical Legion. Zhang Yi and the others were not the first to set out, but they were definitely the first to return. A battle involving tens of thousands of mechanical life forms had ended in less than an afternoon. So when they returned to Samar City, the people of Fremons were stunned. The soldiers and officers looked at Zhang Yi as if he were a monster. If they had not been able to observe the battlefield changes with the help of spy satellites, they would not have been able to believe that Zhang Yi had set off. Prodaja was in his office when he received the news, holding a glass of vodka in his hand as he calculated everything that had happened on the battlefield in his head. When he learned that Zhang Yi had defeated the Mechanical Legion led by demon god Ding and returned to Samar City, the vodka in his hand spilled all over the floor. "Chaos, they won, and they're already back." Prodaja was stunned. After a long while, he muttered, "Is this guy's strength really that powerful?" The space ability and time ability, the fusion of these two attributes in one mutant is truly terrifying. However, soon after, he called Zhang Yi on the video call. Zhang Yi answered the video call and knew that this guy was here to ask for the agreed 10% share of the spoils. Prodaja's face appeared in front of him, and this time, Zhang Yi could clearly see the unmistakable shock in his eyes. "Lord Chaos, you won so quickly?" The facts were right in front of him, but he still couldn't help but ask, hoping that this was just a beautiful misunderstanding. But Zhang Yi nodded and said indifferently, "Yes." "Mr. Prodaja, aren't you happy for me?" Prodaja hurriedly shook his head upon hearing this. No, that's not what I meant. I mean, of course I'm happy for you. I just didn't expect you to be so efficient." Zhang Yi's face revealed a teasing smile. "Well, I have to thank Fremons for providing the arms from the two arsenals." Prodaja paused for a moment. Although spy satellites could monitor the battlefield, when war actually broke out, the powerful energy reactions and electromagnetic storms created by the large number of mechanical life forms made it impossible for him to see everything that happened during the war. Therefore, he did not understand what those old-fashioned thermal weapons could do. In fact, the reason why he had let Zhang Yi take those weapons in the first place was that he had simply thought that Zhang Yi was ripping him off. He had never expected Zhang Yi to be able to put them to use. Zhang Yi said indifferently, "Without the weapons from those two arsenals, I wouldn't have been able to win so easily." These words were by no means empty talk. Without the massive amount of weapons that were poured in, the formation of the Mechanical Legion was disrupted first, and their energy was depleted, destroying a large number of mechanical life forms. Simply with the Volt Shadow Troop and Heavenly God squad of a few dozen people, even if several Epsilons joined the battlefield, it was questionable whether they could win in the end. The strength of the mechanical life forms should not be underestimated, not to mention the existence of those super-large mechanical life forms that are comparable to the Epsilon level of combat power. Lord of War is the most expensive and most efficient group combat skill in the world. What is pouring from the sky is not iron rain, it is clearly gold rain. It's all burning money. Prabhaja pondered for a long time before gradually understanding what Zhang Yi meant. He widened his eyes in shock at such a tactical ploy. But at the moment, apart from Zhang Yi, no one else in the world could carry such a large amount of weapons alone and bomb a battlefield hundreds of kilometers away by themselves. Space ability users actually have such skills? Prabhaja felt like he had learned something again, but unfortunately Fremons did not have such mutants. Zhang Yi reached out to Prabhaja. According to our previous agreement, all weapons and equipment used on the battlefield are provided by you Fremons. So I need to replenish my ammunition. Prabhaja's facial muscles twitched fiercely. Fremons, even though it was a major military power, could not withstand this level of consumption. What's more, Karen City had fallen, and Samar City was only a temporary capital. After some thought, he gave Zhang Yi an address. This is the address of one of our armories. When the war broke out, we were unable to transport the weapons inside in time, so they were left behind. If you need them, you may take them yourself. Prabhaja felt a little sour at this time. The convenience of a mutant with space abilities was really enviable. And the mutant in front of him not only had extremely strong support attributes, but also had amazing combat power. No problem. Zhang Yi, of course, would not be polite with Prabhaja. The thought that he could once again fill his dimensional space with weapons made him feel very content. If there aren't enough weapons, even if there's just a little bit less than enough, he will feel uneasy. Lord Chaos, the 10% spoils we agreed on before, what do you think? Prabhaja couldn't wait to ask. Don't worry, just have someone come and collect it. Who knew that this time Prabhaja shook his head and said seriously, we don't want those mechanical life forms. Huh. Zhang Yi stared at Prabhaja, feeling like he was getting to know the guy all over again. The Prabhaja in his mind was a calculating guy, similar to someone he knew, but he couldn't think of who it was. Prabhaja stared at Zhang Yi and said, word for word, I know that you have already defeated Demon God Ding. Then you also have his body in your hands, don't you? This time, we just want his information. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes. Prabhaja wanted information on Demon God Ding? As a high-ranking demon god, Demon God Ding's body is obviously more advanced than Demon God Gui's. So his information is also very valuable, but according to common sense, Prabhaja shouldn't be in such a hurry. Yang Xinxin's voice sounded in Zhang Yi's ear. Didn't the mutant team from the Pantheon target Demon God Yi? Prabhaja's goal is to collect information on the higher-level demon gods to help them complete their combat mission. Compared to that, the 10% of the resources you have in your hands is not as important. Zhang Yi nodded. That's true. Prabhaja also understands that even if Zhang Yi gives 10% of the resources, they can only be those ordinary mechanical life forms. And the most important demon god mecha cannot be given to Fremons. But at the moment, the common enemy of the human coalition is mechanical civilization. After a little thought, Zhang Yi shared the information he had obtained this time with Prabhaja. The attributes of the upper-level demon gods are all-round superior to those of the lower-level ones. There is not much difference in terms of body materials, but the energy level is one level ahead. The most important thing is, Demon God Ding, he has special abilities. Prabhaja frowned, special abilities? Zhang Yi said with a smile, something like supernatural powers. This guy is actually not a completely mechanical life form. To be precise, he is a cyborg with the core of a living organism. So, they can also display abilities similar to supernatural powers. I hope you can bear this in mind. Prabhaja's eyes revealed a look of astonishment upon hearing this. They are not mechanical life forms? The information provided by Zhang Yi was undoubtedly worth its weight in gold. In the past, everyone had believed that the demon gods were merely higher-level combat-type mechanical life forms. But once it was confirmed that they were also artificially created beings modified from humans, then it was a completely different concept. Prodaja's eyes widened, and suddenly he ended the communication. Because of this important piece of information, he had to inform the Pantheon's crusade team as soon as possible. Zhang Yi and the others returned to their residence to rest. Yang Xia personally cooked and prepared a large amount of delicious food for Zhang Yi. Now her supernatural ability index has also reached the level of a captain, with 9,800 points. The abilities of mutants can be improved through constant training. Combat-oriented mutants have to fight constantly, while support-oriented mutants also repeatedly use their abilities. Therefore, people like Yang Xia and Lu Karen have all gained rapid improvement through repeated work. Of course, the key is that Zhang Yi provides them with supplies at any cost. For example, the origin of the earth centipede that Zhang Yi used on Yang Xia. If it were used on someone with a talent level of Baili Changqing, 1/3 would be enough to bring them to the apex of Delta. But who can blame Zhang Yi for being so wealthy? When training his own people, he values loyalty above all else, and will train up anyone he trusts at any cost. Yang Xia is now very capable, and the food she makes has multiple effects. Her skills have also grown tremendously over the past 3 years. Not only has she mastered a variety of cuisines, she is also good at making desserts, and her tea and coffee are of professional level. She served the food she made to Zhang Yi, who ate it with gusto. Not only did it replenish the energy he had expended, it also relaxed his body and mind. He planned to take some time to rest, and then ordered his subordinates to tell him immediately if they had any information about the battlefields elsewhere. But at this moment, he suddenly thought of something and asked Deng Shintong, who was eating a piece of cake with black tea nearby, "I remember that the people from the Pantheon went to deal with demon god Yi. So which foreign army from which country will deal with demon god Jia?" Defeating demon god Ding was not easy for Zhang Yi, and he also had awe in his heart for the top 3 demon gods and did not dare to underestimate his enemies. He was just curious as to which foreign country would dare to take on this task. As far as he could remember, the Knights of the Round Table of King Arthur and the Natural Science Association of Columbia had already been assigned the task. Deng Shintong thought for a moment and said, "Well, I think it was the people from the Roman Temple of God." Rome? Zhang Yi frowned. He wasn't familiar with the place, but he remembered that it was a middle to upper-level European country. And he knew nothing about the mutants from that country. Are they very strong? Deng Shintong shrugged. "I don't know. But I do know one thing." He looked at Zhang Yi with a smile, his eyes playful. "In the battle against the Mechanical Legion, they set the fastest record." They set the fastest record? Zhang Yi couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. He hadn't thought of that. He had always thought that the record they had set of destroying an entire Mechanical Legion in 20-odd minutes was the fastest. Deng Shintong nodded. "They used even less time. And it was almost half of what we did." Zhang Yi frowned slightly. "So there are still experts out there. There's no shortage of strong people in this world. I'll have to investigate the top mutants in other countries when I have time." The Relihua Federation region. The team that took over the mission here was a team of mutants from Rome. The most special thing about this team is that the 3 epsilons leading the team are a family of 3. The husband, Jupiter, the god of light, is the most powerful god in Rome. The wife, Juno, the goddess of frost, and their son, Crus, the god of flame. Normally, there are no such coincidences, with a family of 3 all being mutants and all being top-level epsilon-class mutants. But where there's a will, there's a way. Not to mention for the most powerful mutant in Rome. As for how he did it, of course it was because Juno was his wife and Ceres his adopted daughter. After becoming the most powerful god in Rome, Jupiter married Juno and adopted Ceres in order to consolidate his power. Only in this way could he have the most solid authority, and no one in all of Rome could shake his position. Today's Rome is already his kingdom, Jupiter. When he came to Fremons, he was also ambitious and wanted to take this opportunity to create some achievements. And most importantly, of course, was to obtain a lot of resources. So in the midst of fierce competition, he did not hesitate to take on the most difficult, but also absolutely the most profitable task, the conquest of demon god Jia. And for this conquest, he was also fully prepared. When other people came to Fremons, they would bring at most a few hundred entourage members with them. But this time, Rome has mobilized 50,000 elite troops to join the battle. This battle will show the world the majesty of the Holy Roman Empire once again. Jupiter stood in midair, his body radiating a sacred light, while before him was a powerful army armed to the teeth. Snow chariots, like the fiercest steel monsters, quietly prowl the ground. Rome is not close to Fremons, and he has spent a lot of energy assembling this army, passing through several war zones before successfully arriving here. As long as we can successfully take down this mechanical legion, then all the effort will be worth it. By then, neither Britannia nor the Europa Alliance will be able to suppress Rome. Jupiter was ambitious. Post-apocalyptic Europe had become a mess, with many countries fighting over resources and population, and war never ceasing. Only by constantly fighting and becoming stronger could one become the overlord in this post-apocalyptic world. Every day, new countries or powers were born, and organizations also perished. For example, in the source of the Eurasian continent, Saladin of the Khitan Empire rose from the killing and established an empire that the surrounding countries dared not underestimate. Only by seizing the opportunity can one become the king in the midst of chaos. Roman army, follow me to fight the enemy. The voice of Jupiter echoed in the headset of every Roman soldier. The army set out and, according to the established tactical plan, began to storm the Rewa Federation region. They had been preparing for this battle for a long time and had already mapped out the distribution of mechanical life forms in the area.